I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway where it's a frigid 19 degrees at this hour. Thank you for joining me. Been a very dark weekend, and in the season of light that is Christmas and Hanukkah together, I hate it that I have to open up a week's shows this way, but we cannot ignore the news. There's a horrific massacre down under. 16 are dead at Bondi Beach at a Hanukkah celebration. I do not know that every one of the dead victims is Jewish. I suspect they are. They haven't told me. The killers were Islamists. One of the heroes was a Muslim who took down one of the killers. And we also lost 2 American servicemen, an American civilian in Syria. But the massacre of Jews down under, after 2 years of warning by the Jewish community of Australia to an indifferent and deaf left-wing government of the rising threat of Islamist violence, sickens me, and ought to sicken you. It is globalized the Intifada, made real and deadly. That's what that term means, Mayor-elect Mamdani. And though it's not the language you used, it's the language you didn't condemn. It's the language of mass murderers everywhere. There was a plot broken up in New York. There was a plot broken up in Germany. Jews apparently have become fair game for radical Islamists everywhere in the world, though the war in Gaza is in a ceasefire. It's not about the war in Gaza. It's about killing Jews. And the doublespeak from people who want to hide from the fact that the modern pogrom is back is neither persuasive, compelling, or coherent. It's idiocy. And everyone who has tried to apologize for Islamist violence or ignore it, you can't, and you're complicit with it. If you have walked in a march that had globalized the Intifada in it, if you've chanted that, blood's on your hand. Because that's the Australian beach massacre is globalizing the Intifada. It is licensing to kill Jews. Wherever they are, whether or not they're Zionists, you have no idea. It's a Chabad Hanukkah service. You have no idea. I had my friend Stephanie send a note, which I think is a very good one. If there's a Hanukkah service near you and you're a Gentile, go to it. Go to it. Stand in solidarity with our Jewish friends and our Jewish fellow citizens. Make yourself part of the target and let it be known that you won't go along with it. And instead of making your entire contribution out to your Christian church, make part of it out to a Jewish synagogue. We are their younger brothers, we Christians. And you ought to be sick. You really ought to be sick at what happened there. You also have to be sick at what happened at Brown for a couple of reasons. They're in an exam. I remember exams both at law school and undergrad. You're tense, you're focused, you've up all night, you've worked, you've crammed. It's an engineering building. It doesn't mean they're engineers. One of the victims was the chair of the Brown Republican Club. I do not know. There aren't enough details about whether she was specifically targeted. Early reports suggested something had been yelled before the shooting began. And people think, was it Allahu Akbar? Was it some sort of ideological declaration? Was it anti-Trump? I don't know. You don't know. I know they screwed this up. The killer, I don't even understand how this can happen. American university campuses are very heavily surveilled. Within buildings and within the perimeter, they have their own police forces. Not only did the suspect get away, they arrested the wrong person based upon pings No one interdicted his coming or going. And I say he because they're overwhelmingly young men. And we've lost him. This killer could literally be anywhere. It's been 24 hours. You know how far you can go in 24 hours? Now, they might be in the bathroom stall down the hall. I'm sure they're searching the campus. Just send everyone home. There aren't going to be any exams. I don't expect students to collect their thoughts. Send everybody home. Clear the campus out. And begin a perimeter secure, building by building search. And they are doing what needs to be doing, the Bureau I trust, when they get to the crime fighters, to the real professionals. But that was horrific. And of course, it chills every parent with a student at any institution, K through 17, grad students. Security at campuses, security at campuses, security at campuses, because the American compact, the American consensus about how one conducts arguments is frayed. It's falling apart. Charlie's murder was part of that, but this is part of it too. And this is an ideological strike until it's not. It might go into the category of mental breakdown, but it does not have the earmarks mental breakdown. The target is too carefully chosen. My first thought was a student snapped during exams. Pressure can be high. But that's when I thought it was an engineering exam of the sort that, there isn't any grade inflation. There isn't any faking the second law of thermodynamics. There isn't any pretending to be prepared. So maybe it was a break, a psychotic break, but it normally doesn't evidence itself with a plan to escape. That doesn't normally enter into this. And I've been reporting on these things for 35 years, since the first one. Violence for 35 years, Columbine's 1999, so I guess it's only 27 years. And you can usually divide them up into buckets pretty quickly. Psychotics and ideologues. That's the first big buckets. And then the ideologues subdivide Islamist, trans, right-wing white supremacists. But what I originally thought would turn out to be psychiatric doesn't appear to be, because of a coherent plan to escape. Also, news arrived that Jimmy Lai has been convicted. Jimmy Lai is the world's most preeminent human rights prisoner, held in solitary confinement in Hong Kong. He is a British citizen. The charges are trumped up. The charges are not true. He's in solitary confinement and he's ill. He's 78 years old, diabetic, not been allowed to practice his Catholic faith. I think Chairman Xi is trying to kill him. All I can pray for, and you can as well, is that having got their fake conviction and their ounce of flesh from Jimmy Lai, that President Trump and Secretary Rubio continue in their campaign to get him released and exchange with the United States. We hope that happens. And then finally, Ukraine-Russia war. The EU seized Russian assets, and instead of coming to the peace table, Russia complained that their assets ought not to be seized. I remind you, they've stolen thousands of Ukrainian children. They've fired thousands of millions at civilians. They are a criminal regime run by a despot who is reckless. So, despite every effort of President Trump and President Zelensky to arrive at a ceasefire agreement, Russia's not interested, for reasons that defy anything. So that's the weekend. We'll talk more about that with Ryan Salam in hour number 3. But I do want to end this segment by thanking all of you who have helped us with Angel Tree. The banner's at the top of HughHewitt.com. We have 10 days to Christmas. We really have 8 days to collect money. We might be able to do it on the 9th day. To go into how many kids can we serve. There are 1.5 million children who are separated from their parent or parents who are in prison right now. And you can make it easier with $30. They get a present from mom or dad, a note, a Bible, a connection to Angel Tree. On Friday, some friends of ours, Jan and Carol, sent in a humongous gift. Thank you. But whether it's $30 or $30,000, every $30 serves another one of the 1.5 million children in the category of need. And Angel Tree is the person to do that, and you are the person who can contribute. Thank you in advance. Go to HughHewitt.com. The banner is at the top. You cannot miss it. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, and I always take my Relief Factor in the first hour. I want to remind you that I do that. 19 degrees outside. I'm always honest with you. I do not go out when it's 19 degrees. I might have done that when I was 21. Probably wouldn't have done it when it was 21 because it's icy too. And you end up on your rear end doing that. And it was trouble enough getting to church and to dinner over the weekend because Virginia had that weird mix. And then just, it's not unique. The whole eastern seaboard's frigid, but that's not what Virginia is supposed to be. I have my Icarian curcumin with Retro and Omega. Take it right now. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you know I just did it. You could see me do it. If you're listening on the Salem Radio Network, one of our great affiliates, you heard me do it. I take it every day. I remind you it's a perfect Christmas present for someone who pretty regularly complains about a minor ache or pain. Boy, my back hurts today. Boy, my neck is just not feeling so good. I've got tennis elbow. My knees hurt. Whatever. All you have to do is call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or head over to their website, find the starter pack for $19.95, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Please welcome Bethany Mandel. She is in Israel. You can follow her on X at Bethany Shondark. Hello, Bethany. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I can't see you because my return is messed up. Dwayne's working on it, but that's okay. I'm going to pretend that you look great and you're feeling great. But I've listened to the commentary pod today. Seth called in. It was dark. I've listened to Dan Senor's podcast. They are dark. I'm going to talk with Ryan Salam today about how dark this is. What is the reaction to the massacre at Bondi Beach in Australia, in Israel?
So it was interesting when we were out with our kids on Sunday afternoon when the news first hit. And what was remarkable was everyone around us was talking about it, which is something we've never experienced when there's something like this that happens, an anti-Semitic terror attack. It feels like we're kind of walking around in a bubble and everyone around us is sort of going around as usual. That wasn't the feeling here. Everyone from the guy behind the counter at the coffee shop was talking about it to people at the museum around us. So it was a very sort of unifying, interesting, different experience to sort of feel that alongside a bunch of Israelis who know what this is like. This is something that is much more normal here. So it was nice in a way to have people around who understood sort of what that moment meant. But Israelis kind of shook their head and said, you know, everyone's been warning Australians about this forever, and this was the logical end result of everything that they've allowed to fester on the side of the world for a long time.
You know what would the difference would be post 10/7 in Israel between what happened to a terrorist in Israel and the terrorist in Australia is there would have been a lot more armed people in Australia to shoot these SOBs. They'd have been dead. I think they went for 11 to 14 minutes uninterrupted. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the videos I saw were terrifying. They were getting off shot after shot after shot, and no one did intervene. No one could intervene. There's some videos of police who declined to intervene, and it felt a lot like Uvalde in that way. But yeah, no, I mean, walking around, you see a million people around you with guns. And when I was young and much more inexperienced with guns and uncomfortable with guns, it made me uncomfortable. It made me scared seeing all of those people with guns. But now it makes me feel a lot safer when I look around and I see people who have a rifle slung over their backs, and I know that they are highly trained and could intervene in a moment's notice. And they have. You know, we've had terror attacks here happen, and Israelis have stepped in really remarkable ways just because they were able to be armed.
Now, Bethany, the comment was made on the commentary pod this morning that Globalize the Intifada has worked. There was an attack planned on a German Christmas market. There was one planned in New York, the details of which are still emerging. I've got some tape on that. I imagine they're being planned around the world. The beast is unleashed. The ancient
Yeah.
evil is like Mordor, if I may borrow from Tolkien. It's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and they're coming for the Saturday people and they're coming for the Sunday people. That's why they go after the Christmas market and the Hanukkah celebration. I was watching the remarks of a former hostage who was held in Gaza, Omer Shem Tov. He was talking to a news affiliate out in California recently, and he said, Hamas told him themselves, first we're going to go for the Saturday people, then we're going to go for the Sunday people. We're going for world domination here, and when they tell you who they are, you should listen.
The leader of Hamas declared yesterday they're not going to demilitarize. There will be no international security force, but we welcome the aid. And I read that and I said that's a rejection of the ceasefire deal, and the IDF ought to go back to war. But I don't know that Israel has the appetite for that. Am I right?
Yes, but to some extent, they already have gone back to war. They took out someone over the weekend. Hamas sent rockets as a result on Sunday. We got those rocket alerts on Sunday afternoon, and in the nearby towns around Gaza that we were in just a week ago. We were there with our kids a week ago, and we kind of looked at each other and thought, well, glad it didn't happen last week instead of this week. So there's already sort of simmering tensions on both sides. But I don't think that Israel has the appetite to go back to a full-on war. But Hamas clearly still has some capability as if they were able to send rockets into Israeli territory, 2 days yesterday.
What did your children react to the rocket announcement? How did they react to the rocket announcement?
They were nervous going down there. Everywhere you turn, there's a shelter, and we had prepped them before we went and said, there's a possibility that there will be a rocket, and this is what we do, and this is, if we're in the car, this is how we get out of the car, and if we're in town, this is where we go, and this is what we do. They were scared for sure, but this is the reality here, and they understood that Hamas rockets are not terribly powerful. They're there to terrorize, and they're not impressive. You just have to make sure that you're near a shelter and stay there for a few minutes to let the Iron Dome do its job.
Are you more or less likely to move to Israel after this trip?
Honestly, probably less. I know a lot of your Israeli listeners are probably going to hate hearing that. The security situation here, I have a friend who lives here and, he's a grandfather and he wrote in an email last week, and I think it's true. He said the security situation here is grating. It can get really tiresome really quickly. And, I've driven through a million checkpoints at this point with my kids. There was a stone throwing attack on the road that we were driving on a couple hours after we were on it. We're going to dinner tomorrow night in a not a settlement, but in a town of sorts in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank, where people tried to break in just a few days ago with axes and knives to commit mass murder. I can see that being very grating.
Burdening. Yeah. We hope to have you back soon, Bethany. Are you coming back this weekend?
No, I'll New Year's. You're stuck with me here for another 2 weeks.
Oh, good. Well, then we'll talk to you from there again next week. Bethany Mandel, always a pleasure. Follow her at themomwars.substack.com or at...
Got very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
One of the many wonderful moments of Princess Bride. Oh, here's another one. Cut number 4.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Stop saying that! Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die! Now!
Offer me money.
Yes.
Power to promise me that.
All that I have and more. Please.
It was one of my favorite movies. It's just an American classic. Rob Reiner went on a run when he was alive. Look, we disagreed about most things. I did work with him on Prop 10 decades ago. We made a few appearances together for KCET in the Begathon days. Here's a Rob Reiner flashback. I really, by the way, I really regret President Trump's comments today. I hope someone in his inner circle advises him to take them down. They're inappropriate. Here is Rob Reiner at the Commonwealth Club years ago, cut number 6.
Life in a way, because the show of shows was on 13 weeks, it was on 39 weeks a year, live, an hour and a half live, 39 weeks, wow. And then they were off 13 weeks. So that 13 weeks, which was during the summer, we spent the summers together. And so, you know, it was probably, I had more time with them than a lot of parents.
Most people don't get 13
weeks in a row, yeah, to be with your dad.
Very demanding when he was working, but
well, when he was working, yeah. I remember one time going down to the...
Oh, that's too bad. There's more to it than that. Did it die on us? He talked about going down to the writer's room at the show it froze on me, and they would be screaming at each other. And all this giant, Mel Brooks and every other giant with Carl Reiner in the writer's room just screaming at each other. One more bit from cut number 3. All the clips are frozen, so I can't say anything. All I can tell you is, look, he was wrong about everything. He was often abrasive. He was often over the top, ungentlemanly, and tough. But his son suffered from addiction and mental illness. Lived on the streets of Portland, Maine for a long time. I was reading about him today, and it's just one of those things you pray never happens to your family. You say to yourself, please don't let that happen to my family. But it does. And it doesn't matter how rich and famous you are. I didn't know about this, by the way. I don't read the trades. I don't read gossip sheets. But it's a tragedy. It was a very great shock. And in a period of time like this, you just say prayers for the family, prayers for everyone who worked with him, who was close to him. And in their grief, mourn with those who mourn. That is, if you ever watch The Chosen, and not many people have, but many people have, you'll know that mourn with those who mourn is one of the most important admonitions of Christ in the Sermon on the Mount. Mourn with those who mourn. And so a lot of friends of Rob Reiner. He certainly had a lot of opponents as well, a lot of enemies. But it is important that you mourn with those who mourn. And if you don't like someone, don't say anything at all. And he was a fixture in my entire, because All in the Family got started when I was still in grade school. He'd been a fixture in everyone's life for as long as anyone has paid attention to American. Stand By Me. All the movies, they'll have, at this year's Oscar, they'll do a great salute, and he was much loved in Hollywood. I know he's a man of the left, of the hard left. I know he was particularly critical of President Trump, but he was also critical of all Republicans. But he did have a big heart. His Prop 10 was sort of a good idea. It was a bad idea in half, and it was a good idea in half. And I took the good idea. I served on the Prop 10 committee in Orange County, and we did good stuff with the money. But a lot of people just wasted it, just like everything else in California. So it wasn't a great idea. It was an okay idea. But he played in politics, and he was a much better film director and actor than he was a political activist, and certainly more than he was a commentator. But an American unique, original, and he will be much missed in the entertainment community, and I will miss his work product, at least most of it that had nothing to do with politics. When Harry Met Sally, I mean, it just goes on and on. Rob Reiner and his wife dead at 78. I hope you're getting ready for Christmas. I am by inviting my friend Aaron Bear back. Aaron is the president of the Center for Christian Virtue in Ohio, and it originally came to my attention via our mutual friend, Attorney General David Yost, that the Center Club of Cleveland, which is a fine institution at which I've spoken, was under pressure to cancel Aaron from the LGBTQ community of Cleveland. But the city club said, no, Aaron is coming. Have they stuck by that, Aaron?
It's just a new day today with cancel culture. I feel like, a few years ago, a group like this that is, right in the heart of corporate America in downtown Cleveland would cave to this kind of pressure. But all the credit in the world to this guy, Dan Moulthrop, who's the head. He's a Jewish guy. He's not somebody who's aligned with us on a lot of different issues. But he understood, hey, people want to understand why it is we're having success in Ohio and across the country today. So They're sticking by their guns, which is again just rare. I feel like not too long ago, this was exactly the type of thing people pull out the SPLC and all the hate group stuff, and people run for the hills, but it's not happening anymore.
When I saw the city club, I know Dan, and
Okay.
I know Dan would never buckle. So I thought maybe he had stepped down. I don't follow it every day. I don't go to Cleveland that often, but I just couldn't imagine him buckling, and he did not buckle. So kudos to the city club. Aren't you going to be talking about the backpack bill? I mean, it's not like what you did for Ohio was get the backpack bill passed.
Well, this is what's funny about this is that you have these areas in America today, like Cleveland, that have these really polarized groups, like the Equality Ohio and HRC and all these things that are so disconnected. They can never understand why would families actually want to be able to choose the education that meets their needs, or why don't people want boys playing in girls' sports, or people doing experimental medical procedures, transgender medical procedures on kids. And so all they could do is label us as hate groups for saying, "Hey, let's stop these things, or let's have school choice in our country." And instead of wanting to come in and better understand, they just want to cancel us. But again, credit to Dan. It just feels like a new day. I think again, the president deserves a lot of credit for this, for not backing down from things. But it feels like a new day where these groups aren't pushing guys like me out of the door and saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation and better understand these things."
Better be a good speech, though. Don't let us down. Now, Aaron, when we were talking about this, you let me know, hey, can I come on and talk about President Trump's rumored move to reclassify dope on the schedules and I said, well, I'm kind of ambivalent about this because I hate the idea of it being a Schedule One drug and the states selling it door to door. It just makes me think that the system isn't working. Maybe he ought to adjust to the reality of the world. And you said, whoa, partner, you're wrong, which is what Aaron exists to do along with Maria. She does it too. So she's wrong about the Steelers. I think you're wrong here, but explain to me why you're against it.
Well, just for what it's worth, Hugh, there is a saying around the Bear household that when something goes on in the country, the first thing one of us says is, what does Hugh Hewitt think about it? And the only thing Maria would ever say you've been wrong about is the Steelers. But beyond that, this is one area I think we might be able to convince you over on. And just for context here, like you mentioned, the DEA under the Department of Justice has marijuana scheduled as a Schedule One drug. That means there's a highly likelihood of abuse with it, and there's no real medical benefits to it, no studied medical benefits to it, right? And actually, the New York Times just affirmed that in a study in a story they came out with last week. President Trump is looking at advancing what was a Biden administration policy of reclassifying into Schedule 3. Now, that doesn't legalize it. That doesn't legalize it federally. What it does do, it allows these marijuana companies in the states to basically apply for tax breaks, business tax breaks, things like that. We estimate it's about a $2 billion payout to the marijuana industry. Here's the only thing that matters about this, Hugh. This is the only question we have to ask ourselves, is would America or would our individual towns be better off with more people smoking weed? That's the only question we got to ask ourselves, because that's the only effect this is going to do. Why? What else?
No, it's not. There are negative externalities to misclassifying a narcotic. Now, by the way, I believe all of Alex Berenson's research. I believe in Warn Your Children. I think we ought to tell people it's a psychotropic now and it can cause schizophrenic breaks. It's much stronger than it was 40, 50 years ago. I believe all that. But when you negatively classify, you deny the banking system, which creates downstream criminal activity, including money laundering and a bunch of other negative externalities. Have you considered the positive steps from making it Schedule 3 as opposed to Schedule 1?
Well, Hugh, actually, I think to that point, if the question is, what is the most accurate way of classifying this drug? If you look at the definitions of what a Schedule 1 drug is, this meets it by the book. The only reason to reclassify it then by what you're describing here is, well, because of all these external factors that have nothing to do with what the definition of a Schedule 1 drug is, which is highly likelihood for abuse and no medical benefits, no real medical benefits to it. It fits those by the book. And actually, the marijuana we have today is even more, again, when I was a kid, the marijuana that we were smoking back then, and that was well before I was a Christian, was nothing like the marijuana you see today. And it is way more addictive and way more dangerous than we see anymore.
Does the demand curve from senior citizens to 18-year-olds set you back and perhaps push you more towards regulate the content of the cannabis, not the entire product line?
I think we can do both, but I think actually the longer, we really are just beginning to see the impacts of this experiment of 10 years of legalized marijuana. About 40 states have legalized it now. We're actually seeing some states like Maine, like Massachusetts, considering putting the cat back into the bag and backing out of this. But the real data we see more and more is there really are no benefits to communities. And again, Hugh, I don't think we do need to overcomplicate this. Does anybody really enjoy walking down the streets of the U.S. Capitol or any major city
you win.
and just getting blasted with marijuana every time you walk anywhere? It's miserable.
Try the stretch from Penn Station to Midtown. You'll be stoned by the time you get there. But there are also negative externalities for declassifying the Schedule III, including illegal vast farms across the United States run by Chi-Coms. Were you aware of that? The Chi-Coms have gotten into this business?
Oh, it's massive. And actually, the more readily these things are available, the harder it is to find the bad actors. You look at any of these states, especially Colorado, New York, there was just a story in Cranes about how there was 3,600 illegal operating marijuana shops. Because if you're a cop, how are you supposed to tell what the good guys are and the bad guys are?
You're going to have to work harder, Aaron, because I hear it's coming. Who is the principal spokesperson for your team? We got 10 seconds.
Smart approaches on marijuana. Learn about sam.org. That's the place to go to get your voice heard on this one.
Say it again.
Smart approaches on marijuana.
Smart approaches on marijuana. Aaron Bear, always a pleasure. Adjacent to a Steeler fan, though you might be. It really is one of my favorite songs. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I love my audience. My audience loves me. After 25 years, I can say that. And occasionally, some of them gig me. They gig me. So said Margaret Fett. Margaret Fett, or it might be Fetty. It's spelled F-E-T-T-E. Margaret is the owner of the University of Sewing and arrived a package couple days back. I'm usually pretty suspicious of packages. Back in the Laura Schlesinger J, I never opened them, but I do now. And so arrived this package, and I open up. And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll see a letter with Margaret's card. Bernina made to create sewing machines, accessories, and servicing. Margaret Fetty, owner, Bloomington, Indiana. Just remember, universityofsewing.com. Hello, Hugh. We are fans of your radio show. We live in Bloomington, Indiana, home of the Hoosiers. Smiley face, wide-eyed. We sell Bernina sewing machines and fabric. Just thought you might like to make a new bandana. Margaret Fett. Apparently, there is a demand for Indiana fabric. Believe it or not, I have in my hand a big piece. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, who is herself a seamstress, said, that's a big piece of fabric. And it covers the entire screen. And it has on it Indiana. Now, I think with some modifications, we can turn this into almost an Indians or a Guardians bandana. Not that I'm really a cravat would actually be more my style, don't you think, Margaret? A cravat. But the good news is I have an IU Scott Phillips wedge, as he is well known, for an incident I will not go into on the golf course many, many years ago. Sometimes it's youthful indiscretions. But Margaret, this was well played, Mr. Bond. Well played, Ms. Bond. And they have this wonderful, thank you for your order. Explore our offerings. Bernina sewing machines, long arms, quilting fabrics, apparel fabrics, needles, accessory threads. Stay connected. universityofsewing.com. I think she is a genius at marketing. And she has laid in wait for the 25 years of this show's run until I said something bad about Indiana. Who says anything about Indiana? Really? I mean, Schroeder's from there, but I say bad things about Schroeder. It's not his fault he's from Indiana, but I'm not even sure it's populated. But Margaret, my hat is off to you. That was a good gig. Hard to do that to me, and it's new and it's unique. So to everyone, the universityofsewing.com, you must go. Sometimes my alma maters leave me shocked. It's like in the lotto of alma maters, I picked Harvard out of the hat and the University of Michigan Law School out of the hat, and both have been dreadful burdens to bear for the last 3 years. Today, it's the less than 2 days since the massacre on Hanukkah at the beach in Australia. Less than a day after U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli announced the breakup of a terror plot in L.A. for New Year's. Today arrives a letter from Penny Pritzker, because what better day on which to send out this news? Dear members of the Harvard community, that would be me, class of 78, I wrote in August 2024 to let you know that Alan Garber, then serving as Harvard's interim president, would assume the title of president and lead the university through the end of the 2026-2027 academic year. I'm very pleased to write today with the news that the governing boards and Alan have agreed to extend his service as president for indefinite time beyond June 30th, 2027, as Harvard and other universities continue to navigate a period of extraordinary challenge and work to affirm higher education's indispensable role in driving discovery and improving lives. Since taking up the duties of the presidency in January 2024, Alan has demonstrated even more fully the remarkable qualities apparent during his 12-plus years as Harvard's provost and chief academic officer. Blah, 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 blah. It's all about Alan Good. Members of the governing board have consistently heard similar expressions of admiration and appreciation for Alan, blah, blah, blah. The experience of the last few years have given new meaning, to the words sung each year at commencement, calm rising through change and through storm. Alan's humble, resilient, blah, 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 blah. In his short tenure, he has moved forward on nearly every level, from restoring a sense of community. No, it hasn't. That was my interjection. During a period of intense scrutiny, not nearly intense enough, and division, got that right, to launching vital new programs on viewpoint diversity, no, they haven't, and civil discourse, and instituting, wait for it, instituting new actions to fight anti-Semitism as well as anti-Arab bias. Bingo! Were you as unaware as I was of anti-Arab bias at Harvard? They can't help themselves. They're ill. It's a mind virus. As our university community looks ahead, attentive to shifting realities while resolute in upholding enduring values, blah, 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 blah. Sincerely, Penny Pritzker, Senior Fellow, Harvard Corporation. Anti-Arab bias. On the first broadcast day after the Hanukkah massacre in Australia, and here's U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli announcing the terror plot in L.A. for New Year's Eve, cut number 8.
Valuable assistance over the weekend with a very complex and coordinated search warrants that were done. The charges we are announcing today stem from the defendants and their co-conspirators' detailed, coordinated plot to bomb multiple U.S. companies on New Year's Eve. Thankfully, that plot has now been foiled thanks to the hard work of the FBI and the Department of Justice. This investigation was initiated in part due to the September 2025 executive order signed by President Trump to root out left-wing domestic terror organizations in our country, such as Antifa and other radical groups like the Turtle Island Liberation Front. As the president made clear, recent attacks across the country have highlighted the grave threats posed by these far-left domestic terror groups. These threats are sophisticated.
It goes on. Now, my question is, to Penny Pritzker, why in the world did you send this letter out within 48 hours of a massacre of Jews in Australia? Are you just tone deaf? And the answer is, I think she's tone deaf and not purposely malignant. But Can you list any details on what you've done on the intellectual diversity side? Because I'm unaware of them. Can you list any professors who've been brought on? Harvey quit. Harvey Mansfield retired in the last 3 years. Can you tell me what's gone on at the Kennedy School? Can you tell me who your bright new hires are, who are Jewish? Can you point to me any conservatives of any sort who've joined the faculty of liberal arts? Can you name for me at the law school anyone, any professor who's been on board, brought on board and tenured, who teaches originalism? Can you show me anyone on your faculty who will stand up and defend President Trump? One person. One. Half the country voted for him. I'm guessing half of the parents who write the checks voted for him for the undergrads. Got any evidence at all that the Crimson has changed? Got any evidence at all that the Jewish students at Hillel are feeling safer? If so, why'd you leave it out of the letter? Why do you expect us to be morons and accept this stuff? I'm done. I told my friends, I've always gone to reunions, and for years, I've never been invited in any official capacity to Harvard, but for years my class committee would ask me to debate Deval Patrick. It would be Grover Norquist and Hugh Hewitt versus Deval Patrick and Mark Guerin. And Guerin's a buddy of mine, he's the closest friend in the world. And Deval's a good guy. I mean, wrong, but not rotten. Grover's to my right, I'm center right. And so we'd have fun at a panel. This past reunion, they had no one from any class do anything because they were run by a bunch of politically correct, absolutely ideologically extremist from the left people. And I said at the end, I shook hands with people going around saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. You will not see me here again. Done. They can't fix it. It's broken. And all I keep telling my grandkids, they're all smart. And that's just not a grandpa thinking, that's just, they're smart. Don't go near an Ivy League. It's not because of violence like at Brown. It's just because you won't get an education. You won't learn. You won't meet anyone who's normal. You won't meet anyone with whom you can have a friendly discussion and disagree and then continue to be friends and go out and have a beer with them. You're going to be walking on eggshell. Go to a big state U. Go to a big state U. And I don't care, provided it's not Alabama. Can't go to Alabama. Can't go to Georgia either. Tennessee is okay because they're never going to be any good in football. Do I have anyone else? Don't go to Berkeley. By the way, state U's do not include Berkeley, UCLA. UCLA is fine, but I'm not sure you're going to have any fun there. That's like the university where you go not to have fun. MIT used to be the university you would go to not to have fun, but now it's turned into a place where you kind of have fun because they're building robots that are going to take over the world. But stay away from the Ivies. They can't fix themselves because their boards are not representative of anything approaching normalcy in America. And I think I'm just a normal guy. I mean, I read more books than most people, but I'm pretty much a normal guy. I watched the whole Browns game yesterday. How normal can you be in America? Than to watch, what did we lose, 38-3? Bitter cold in Chicago. And only normal people follow Cleveland sports. I think that's a good indicator, by the way. And I got a normal audience full of normal people, and they know, and you know, and I know that Harvard's run by, not by the 1%, but by the 1/100th of 1%. And the 1/100th of 1% are indifferent to cost and economics. They saw Joe Biden falling apart in real time, and they said nothing. They're extremists. And the university's lost. And I don't think they're ever coming back in my lifetime. And it's a small thing, but it's a telling thing. That on the Monday after a massacre of Jews, they sent us a letter telling us not to worry about anti-Arab discrimination at Harvard. Among other things. Right? No more anti-Semitism, no more anti-Arab. Golly, I got a lot of Arab friends, a lot of Muslim friends. One of the heroes of Australia, by the way, was a Muslim man, fruit vendor, got shot 3 times. He took the gun away from one of the killers. God bless him. I got a lot of Muslim friends. The Islamists are not them. And anti-Arab discrimination. It's like They can't get it out of the bureaucracy. They cannot move it. I'm sure they're still cheating on affirmative action, aren't you? I'm sure they are. They invented it. They're never going to give it up. And they're never going to get a dime from me, but it doesn't matter because they got the 1/100th of 1% people behind them. So happy to join now with Senator Tom Cotton to cover Venezuela and a couple of important issues. But Senator Cotton, Merry Christmas to you. Can I begin by asking if you've had a chance to read the letter from Penny Pritzker from Harvard yet that arrived in my inbox this afternoon?
No, Hugh, I haven't read it yet. I find any number of things to do, even if I had received it. It makes me wonder, why are you receiving letters from Penny Pritzker? I hope you haven't been supporting Harvard financially all these years.
No, I'm not.
Nonsense.
No, I'm not. But it is addressed to the dear members of the Harvard community. So I think you'll probably get two, because you're not only a college graduate, you're a law school graduate. I'm just a college graduate. It includes within it. By the way, it arrives within 48 hours of the massacre of Jews at the Hanukkah celebration on the beach in Australia. So I question the timing. But in any event, it includes this sentence: from restoring a sense of community during a period of intense scrutiny and division to launching vital new programs on viewpoint diversity and civil discourse and instituting new actions to fight anti-Semitism as well as anti-Arab bias, Ellen has not only stabilized the university but brought us together in support of our shared mission. I just want to know if you've ever seen any anti-Arab bias at Harvard.
Oh, yeah, the exact opposite is the case, Hugh. This is a typical liberal trope when it comes to denouncing anti-Semitism. They can't simply just say that anti-Semitism is awful and it reveals a deep rot in the mind of those who hate Jews. And for that matter, if it festers in society, a deep rot inside society, they always have to equivocate and compare it to anti-Arab bias or whatever Penny Pritzker says, or Islamophobia, which of course is also bad and should not be tolerated in polite society. But it's obvious that we've had a rise in anti-Semitism across the world, and unfortunately here in America as well. It's totally disproportionate to any kind of discrimination that Arabs have faced.
Now, it's also 48 hours since Bondi Beach was the scene of a massacre on Hanukkah celebration. Do you think they even gave a minute to thinking about maybe we don't send this out today?
You know, it's hard to get inside the minds of Harvard bureaucrats, Hugh, but I suspect probably not.
Okay, and final question. Have you seen anything in any publication or any event that would indicate to you a Harvard commitment to intellectual diversity or to complying with the Supreme Court's adamant demand that colorblindness enter into the admissions process at every level?
No, Hugh, I think it's the opposite is true. All the evidence as well as common sense and the inherent logic of events suggest that they've been massively resisting that decision and that they are not taking any steps to fulfill their requirements under the law, whether it's race-neutral admissions or protecting the rights of Jewish students on campus.
No, okay. I just wanted to double-check my initial reactions to the latest appeal from the idiots running Harvard. Let me move on to Venezuela. On Friday night, I was on Special Report, and Venezuela came up. I pointed out in 1989, George H.W. Bush, lost just cause, 27,000 American troops, 23 of whom were KIA and many wounded, and no authority was required of Congress. Some was sought thereafter, after the fact, and was given. A, I was flooded with, it doesn't matter, things are different, and B, Venezuela is a bigger country. Do you have any doubt in your mind that we have the capacity to overthrow the Maduro regime?
Well, Hugh, first let me take back to the point you made, the point I've made often. You have Democrats who are up in arms and demand, saying that Donald Trump is acting unconstitutionally or even calling for impeachment because he's simply blowing up a few boats in international waters that are carrying drugs bound for our communities. It'll kill kids across Arkansas and across our nation. By contrast, George Bush invaded an entire country with a land force and overthrew its government. Why? Because the dictator there was a U.S. indicted drug trafficker. That's exactly what Nicolas Maduro is as well. Yet the Democrats think Donald Trump can't blow up a few boats in international waters. And yes, if push came to shove, Hugh, of course we have what's necessary from a military, economic, diplomatic standpoint to win a face-off with Nicolas Maduro. That's one of the reasons why, or one of the points that's been raised in the seizure of that tanker. That tanker was sanctioned. It should have been seized. If it had been transiting the Strait of Malacca or the Persian Gulf, we would have seized it. The drug boats are harmful to Maduro. They cost his government money, but nothing like what seizing the so-called gray fleet of tankers taking sanctioned Venezuela oil to the market will do.
I had Admiral McRaven on Thursday talking about his brand new book, Conquering Crisis, which I encourage everyone to read. And he details when he was a young SEAL commander, they grabbed an Iraqi tanker in the Indian Ocean, and nobody blinked. It was the right thing to do to Saddam in 1990 after he invaded Iraq. So Senator Kaine, your colleague from Virginia, is in full meltdown over the prospect of military action against Maduro. Do you ever take him aside and calm him down?
I have not, Hugh. Let's just say that he has a particularly cramped view of what the president can and should do to defend the nation. I think it's genuinely held, but he's always introducing this or that war powers resolution to try to stop the president from taking action that I suspect you and I and most Arkansans believe are international interests, like stopping drugs from flooding into our communities.
Well, there is a government in exile, I believe, of Venezuela, and I think he's ignored 2 elections in a row, and I believe he's supported by the Cuban state. Is there also an argument that post-Venezuela we turn our attention, because I think we'll do something in Venezuela, that we turn our attention to Cuba because it remains the mothership of instability in all of the Central and South America region?
Yeah, much like it did throughout the Cold War, Hugh, Cuba is still, working throughout Latin America, fomenting anti-Americanism. I wouldn't even say necessarily, Hugh, it's after Venezuela because those two governments are in a kind of symbiotic relationship. It appears that the tanker that we seized last week was bound for Cuba, and ever since Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, came to power and paid homage to the Castro regime in Cuba, they've been working closely together. Venezuela has been providing Cuba cut-rate oil to help prop up its failing economy, failing society, really. And in return, Cuba has provided intelligence and security services to Venezuela. There was a time even in the first Trump term when it looked like Maduro may have been looking for a way out, and I think the Cuban intelligence officers around him told him that he needed to think twice.
Now, yesterday, Chile voted for a free markets, individual liberties government, just like Argentina did, and just like Bolivia did. We have less than a minute. Do you think by the end of the term, Donald Trump, Central South America, and maybe Cuba, will be significantly more free than when he began?
I certainly hope so, Hugh. It's really important for Americans that our own backyard consists of pro-American governments who want to work with us on a cooperative basis to stop drugs from flooding into our country, to stop migrants from crossing their territory and entering our country, oftentimes associated with criminal gangs, to have broader trading relationships with our own neck of the woods. And I think over the last 4 years, Joe Biden, you saw Latin America trending to the left, sometimes the far left, but it's been a welcome change this first year of the second Trump term, and I hope that continues over the next 3 years.
Great to talk to you, Senator Cotton. I know you're going to rush home and read your letter from Harvard, but don't be tricked. Sometimes I just love listening to the classics. If you haven't had a chance yet to listen to Eli Lake's Breaking History podcast on why Jews write some of the best Christmas standards, Christmas season standards. They're not religious music. They're music of Americana from the American Songbook, including that one. And I would encourage you to listen to Breaking History to get that. Also encourage you to go to Consumer Cellular right now and investigate whether or not Consumer Cellular wouldn't make a lot more sense for you. I mean, a lot more sense for you. Save you a lot of money. Call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And when you do, make sure you mention my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H. You'll get your second month free. 1-800-411-4454. Mention my name, Hugh. Or you can just go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Have you looked at your cell phone bill anytime recently? You know how much data you're already using compared to how much you're paying for? You wouldn't know unless you look. You're not going to be able to compare unless you look. Sometimes you'll fall for the free phone gig. A lot of people offer you a free phone if you switch. Not free. It's in your rate. Nothing's free in America. But when you use my special promo code Hugh, you get the second month of Consumer Cellular free. That's a given. And for listeners who are 50 and over, it's only for you. They know all about you. We had one of their execs on to explain this. They know what the average American who's 50 and older use in terms of data, and they're very comfortable offering you a really wonderful plan. 2 lines, not 1, 2 lines of unlimited data. Keep your number, keep your data. Takes less than 20 minutes to switch. Get 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month. So, whether you want to lower your gigs to 5 gigs a month or 10 gigs a month, whether you want the unlimited data and you're 50 and over and you want the $60, maybe you just want to get a different plan, you want to talk to an American-based customer service specialist, then you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you call 1-800-411-4454, and please remember my code Hugh. Now I want to go to Levi Shemtov at the National Menorah Lighting days ago, cut number 7.
To go ahead and forge ahead and dedicate this very event to those who perished in today's massacre alongside him. I ask that everyone pray for the recovery of those who were injured, including a cousin of mine who was in the ICU the last time I checked with serious injuries, and also for the welfare. And I ask all those across the community and beyond, here and around the world, to please pray for the recovery of Ahmed al-Ahmed, someone who was not a member of the Jewish community, but gave up his safety and well-being to stop one of the gunmen and thus prevent even further loss of life. May he recover speedy and fully.
Well said. Well said. And I would encourage, he's from Chabad. Chabad are like the Marines of rabbis. They go everywhere. They're often targeted everywhere as well. You might consider, even if you're a Gentile, supporting Chabad. Here is John Fetterman with Maria Bartiromo yesterday, cut number 10.
It's like, those things kind of penetrate. And now, so that's where we're at. I mean, how can't we just defend, a lot of these views and not just call it what it is? Anti-Semitism is a worldwide scourge, and it's constantly demonstrated to be deadly, and it keeps manifest itself in these things, just like what's happened now in Australia, too.
That's right. And Senator, a moment ago, Lindsey Graham was with me, your colleague from South Carolina, who said a warning to anyone who is trying to say that there should be a Palestinian state. If you create a Palestinian state, what you will get are more killings of Jews. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It's an absolute betrayal for Israel and for the worldwide Jewish community, like whether it's France or Australia or any of these nations, our Western allies now calling for a 2-state solution when Hamas refuses to disarm and are actively trying to kill Jews. I can't imagine why anybody would do that at this point. That is not the appropriate reward after 10-7 and this thing. So I absolutely support.
Well said, Senator Fetterman. Well asked, Maria Bartiromo. You know that is Vic Mattis's intro music during the holidays because he specifically requested Robert Goulet singing. Does that warm your heart, Vic? Do you get all up and ready to go?
I do. That really gets me in the Christmas spirit, Hugh. I guess he is perhaps Canada's greatest export, Robert Goulet, born in Massachusetts, but he grew up in Canada, and he became, in weird ways, Elvis Presley's arch nemesis. There was a story that Elvis got so upset about Robert Goulet's voice, he once shot a television where Robert Goulet was on the TV. I haven't been, well, it was Elvis, it was the king, and it was the later years. I haven't been able to verify. That's what I have heard. So I'll look into that.
I always thought he was grand in Camelot. Let me ask you,
Yes.
Vic, a very particular question. First of all, I'm glad that Getting Hammered is back. We've begun the search for the official sponsor. I offered Mary Catherine 2 suggestions that you approach the Distilled Spirits Association of America and the Potato Chip and Fast and Snack Association. What do you think of both of those?
I would love to have both of them. That's absolutely true. And speaking of potato chips, I read a study. Lay's potato chips conducted a poll, and something like only 60, maybe fewer percent of the people polled knew that Lay's potato chips come from potatoes, actual potatoes. Where did they think they actually come from, if not potatoes? That's disconcerting, and I'd like to do a lot to spread the awareness of that.
Well, let me ask you, if you order, you look into a menu at a regular just sit down and eat diner, and you're served your burger and there are chips on the side, do you feel cheated that you had assumed that there would be fries, but instead they substitute chips?
Yes, but I'm okay with that. It gets, I'll get really cantankerous if, in fact, it comes with a side salad. That's when things can turn ugly inside the diner.
That would be bad. Coleslaw is also a bad substitute. Okay, let's get to the serious stuff. Vic, the slaughter in Australia has been followed by an extraordinary range of reactions, some of which are covered over at the Washington Free Beacon. How hard is it to condemn anti-Semitism for the left?
Yeah, it's extremely hard, Hugh. You think about that chant again. I'd like to go back to globalize the Intifada. And the moment when the mayor-elect, Zoran Mamdani, was asked whether or not he condemned it, and he didn't, and he justified, and he said, really, he thinks of it as a harmless phrase, to invoke peaceful struggle. But everyone else, of course, and people on our side have said, globalize the Intifada means exactly that. It's spread the terror. And then we see this happen on Bondi Beach in Australia, and the horror of it. These 2 Pakistanis were just basically carrying that out. I'm beginning to think that in a very dark way that they're all in on this, right? That the truth is they all harbor this tremendous animus towards the Jews and Israel, and even if they don't personally partake in the violence, something tells me they're not necessarily bothered by it, and I find that so troubling. You think about the horror of October 7. 2 days later in Sydney, on October 9, outside the Opera House, they were chanting "Gas the Jews," and people sort of shrugged. Well, that's their right to say this sort of thing. I'm sure, that'll be the extent of it. No, that's the beginning of it. And so you think about the Australian leader, Albanese. He's, partially responsible for allowing this atmosphere to fester because they're doing things like recognizing a Palestine, for example, and condemning Israel. None of this is good for anybody here.
If we approached, I'm glad you brought him up. If we approached apparently educated leader who is engaged in, if not explicit anti-Semitism, in the indifference to it, and we asked them, are you aware of Barry Strauss's book, Jews versus Rome, and the fact that there were 3 civil wars with the Jews versus Rome in Judea near the time of Christ's life, but not having to do with Christ? It was just Judean nationalism, that they are the indigenous people of the regime until the Bar Kokhba. Third one finally led to the Romans just basically wiping them out, save for a handful in Jerusalem after they shattered the temple. Do you think they have any idea that the Jews are the indigenous people of the region?
No, if you ask them, they all came from, parts of Europe, in particular, perhaps in, Russia or the former Soviet Union, and that the people in that area have always been, quote unquote, Palestinian. And obviously, as you know, and that's a terrific book, by the way, Jews versus Rome.
It is.
It is. And Joseph Epstein reviewed that for us in the Weekend Beacon. This has been going on for a very long time, and the Jews have obviously been persecuted going all the way back to the Babylonian exile, and then over time being expelled from all parts of the world in the 1200s, I believe, in Britain, and then in the 1400s in Spain. And then, of course, the Holocaust. It's been an ongoing struggle for many centuries, and we're just seeing the struggle continue now. And again, the idea that somehow Israel is some fabrication, post-British Empire is outrageous.
I missed the review. I got to go back and find that. In tomorrow's column that I wrote for Fox, I make 3 book recommendations for Christmas. The first one is by Joseph Epstein. If You've Had a Lucky Life, Never Say You've Had a Lucky Life, his autobiography. Did you have a chance to read that, by the way? It's fabulous. It's absolutely extraordinary.
There's a lot about Joe that, you know, and I it took me many years before I felt I was able to call him Joe instead of Mr. Epstein. I believe that he was the one who approached me about the subject once. He said, "Mr. Mattis, shouldn't we be on first name basis now?" And I said, "Yes, thank you. I've been waiting for this for years." He's had a very interesting life, and he's done a lot of work, and he's done a lot for his family, and it's not an easy family life that he had, and raising children and grandchildren. He doesn't talk about that, but I'm glad that this
stepchildren.
Yeah, absolutely.
The novels, short stories, essays, columns, but mostly it is common essay, not the literary one, the common essay that I think he's a genius at. So I'm glad to hear he has graced your pages. I got to go find him on Jews versus Rome, because that's a fabulous book.
He'll be back next Sunday, too.
I hope so soon. That's a promise. Yep. I'm glad to hear it. Vic Mattis, follow him on X at Victorino Mattis. Get, of course, your like and subscribe into Getting Hammered. It's back. Getting Hammered is everywhere on any podcast that you wish to go in. Distilled Spirits Association of America, that's your podcast. But I love my audience. My audience loves me. After 25 years, I can say that, and occasionally some of them gig me. They gig me. So said Margaret Fett. Margaret Fett, or it might be Fetty. It's spelled F-E-T-T-E. Margaret is the owner of the University of Sewing, and arrived a package a couple days back. I'm usually pretty suspicious of packages. Back in the Laura Schlesinger day, I never opened them, but I do now. And so arrived this package, and I open up. And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll see a letter with Margaret's card. Bernina made to create sewing machines, accessories, and servicing. Margaret Fetty, owner, Bloomington, Indiana. Just remember, universityofsewing.com. Hello, Hugh. We are fans of your radio show. We live in Bloomington, Indiana, home of the Hoosiers. Smiley face, wide-eyed. We sell Bernina sewing machines and fabric. Just thought you might like to make a new bandana. Margaret Fett. Apparently, there is a demand for Indiana fabric. Believe it or not, I have in my hand a big piece. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, who is herself a seamstress, said, "That's a big piece of fabric." And it covers the entire screen, and it has on it Indiana. Now, I think with some modifications, we can turn this into almost an Indians or a Guardians bandana. Not that I'm really a cravat would actually be more my style, don't you think, Margaret? A cravat. But the good news is I have an IU Scott Phillips wedge, as he is well known, for an incident I will not go into on the golf course many, many years ago. Sometimes it's youthful indiscretions. But Margaret, this was well played, Mr. Bond. Well played, Ms. Bond. And they have this wonderful, thank you for your order. Explore our offerings. Bernina sewing machines, long arms, quilting fabrics, apparel fabrics, needles, accessory threads. Stay connected. universityofsewing.com. I think she is a genius at marketing. And she has laid in wait for the 25 years of this show's run until I said something bad about Indiana. Who says anything about Indiana? Really? I mean, Schroeder's from there, but I say bad things about Schroeder. It's not his fault he's from Indiana, but I'm not even sure it's populated. But Margaret, my hat is off to you. That was a good gig. Hard to do that to me. And it's new and it's unique. So to everyone, the universityofsewing.com, you must go. So pleased to bring for the very first time to the Hugh Hewitt Show, Reihan Salam, who is the president of the Manhattan Institute. Before that, he was executive editor of National Review. Been around for a while, but our paths have never crossed. So I've read his work for a long time. Ryan, welcome. It's good to meet you virtually through the magic of Zoom and on the radio and the Salem News Channel. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Hugh. It's a great honor. I really appreciate the time.
What I'd like to start with, I have a traditional 2 questions that I ask every first-time guest, and they're kind of wacky, but hang with me. I'll explain it. First of all, was Alger Hiss a communist spy?
As far as I can tell, the answer seems like a resounding yes.
All right, correct number 2. And have you read The Looming Tower?
I am afraid I have not. I know that it's an incredibly important book. I know that I ought to read it, so I'm embarrassed to say that I have not.
All right, well, that's 1.5 out of 2, and I'm glad to begin there. Ryan, I wanted to cover with you today the work of the Institute and then go into my 4 hotspots, but could you explain to the audience what the Manhattan Institute does and does so well and has been doing for so many years?
The Manhattan Institute is a research and advocacy organization that has a deep interest in the American future, in America's cities, and ensuring that we have a bright future as a multi-ethnic republic that celebrates achievement, excellence, that cultivates opportunity, that is really a society that rewards hard work, that wants safe cities that are safe and secure. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in those time-tested principles that have made this country rich, strong, free.
And how do you go about the work?
Well, there are a few different elements to how we do that, Hugh. One thing we do that's a really long-standing, important commitment is we really believe in the power of investigative journalism. We're a small organization, but we believe that, what we can do to advance the American experiment is keep other powerful institutions accountable. And a big part of how we do that is through our magazine, City Journal. We do a lot of investigative journalism to really ensure that our core American institutions are living up to their ideals. That's why we spend a lot of time on higher education. We spend a lot of time on our law enforcement agencies, making sure they have the resources that they need, making sure that they're acting with integrity. That's why we look at K-12 schools. How is the rising generation actually being taught? We care a lot about corruption. We care a lot about whether or not institutions are living up to the values that they ought to be living up to in order to be really effective. So journalism is a really core part of that. We also have a number of policy scholars who have really deep expertise, who need the time and space in order to do long-term projects to understand how to reform and revitalize our institutions. So those 2 elements of what we do really work in tandem. One thing that we've done in recent years, we've really embraced a kind of activist posture. So it's one thing to identify policy solutions, and we do that really well, but we also believe that we need to draw public attention to things that are growing wrong, through our investigative journalism, in some cases through social media campaigns. Just try to really hold institutions accountable to the best of our ability.
Now, before I turn to some specifics, how do people find out what the Manhattan Institute is doing, and if they are moved, sponsor your work?
If you go to manhattan.institute, you can find our website. You can find the breadth of research that we publish. You can visit cityjournal.org. That's another great place to go. We have a number of newsletters that you can subscribe to really keep track with the breadth of our work. But manhattan.institute, visit that website. That's a good one-stop shop to see everything that we're working on.
All right, now, Ryan, I'm going to tell you the Hugh Hewitt view of the world and find out where we agree and disagree. Please. I think that the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world, that Western civilization is the greatest civilization, and that we have 4 enemies: China, Russia, Islamist fundamentalism, and the fraying of what I'll call the American consensus. And that consensus, I mean, our constitutional order and the values within the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, what was the Lincoln quote? The Declaration is the apple of gold within the frame of silver. Are my priorities matched up with yours or the Institute's?
Absolutely. We
All right.
chiefly focus on domestic policy, Hugh, but I believe that you're dead on about all of those priorities.
Okay, so we're coming out a horrific weekend. Number one, we had the massacre of Jews and I believe some non-Jews at Australia's Bondi Beach, and the murder of the Americans in Syria, and that put down to Islamist fanaticism. We had the massacre at Brown, which is the fraying of the American consensus. We had the conviction of Jimmy Lai in China in a show trial. Man might die in jail by the totalitarians who run that country unless President Trump and Secretary Rubio intervene. And we have the ongoing criminal war of Russia against Ukraine, their rejection of a ceasefire, their demand that the EU not take their mourning. So we look at those four big threats. How would you expect a serious person to respond? Let's begin with the massacre of Jews at the beach on Hanukkah.
Well, this is an abomination. This is incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and it is part of this kind of pervasive mental disease. It is a blend of many different ideas. It's not one single phenomenon, but what you're seeing is, in the one case, you see Islamism, Islamic fundamentalism as a weaponized ideology. Then you also have what you might call third worldism, a subject that I know you've thought deeply about, Hugh. But this basically posture that is deeply anti-Western, that draws on Marxist ideas, that draws on a range of different leftist ideas, and so-called anti-colonial ideas that have kind of come together in the form of this opposition to so-called settler colonialism that is really focused on Israel right now in the moment, but also represents a larger, profound threat to every Western society. I think that this ideological idea has been carried forward by many institutions of higher education. You see it even within K-12 schools more and more. And this is not unique to the United States. You see it in societies like Australia as well. You see it in Western societies around the world. And it's something that has served to dehumanize the Jewish people. It has served to anathematize the state of Israel in its struggle for survival. And it's something that, again, is chipping away at that American consensus that you were talking about here at home. And, the foundations of these historic Western nation states that are being taught to embrace self-abnegation, that are being taught to deny their own histories, that are being taught to be ashamed of their histories, they're being offered in its place this kind of bizarre utopian ideology, the idea that you can have a society without sin, a society that is perfectly just. And in order to achieve that, all you have to do is destroy every aspect of our cultural inheritance that has, in fact, given rise to the world's most decent, tolerant, inclusive, capable, wealth-producing societies. So I think that, this kind of romantic antinomian set of ideas, is a set of ideas that is serving as an acid in our societies. And one of the ironies is that the partisans of these ideas, of these anti-Western ideas, present themselves as the champions of tolerance and having kind of an open, creative civilization, when in fact what they're doing is they're destroying those sinews of the societies that have come closest to being genuinely open, dynamic, creative. Societies that have really, in practice, actually fostered immense upward mobility, wealth creation, you name it. So, I mean, this is a massive, massive struggle. And for me and my colleagues, this really feels like battle number one. It's a war of ideas that we have to win.
I agree with that. And I also think that the Manhattan Institute, as is given away by its name, is at the figurative ground zero, not far from the literal ground zero, with the election of Mr. Mamdani as its mayor. Are you going to have to, we have a minute to the break, are you going to have to double up on your output for the next years?
The short answer is yes, because I really believe that America needs an American conservatism that is disciplined, smart, thoughtful in meeting the challenge of this third worldist anti-Western ideology. We need to renew the foundations of a kind of dynamic market economy. We need an economy that young people can believe in And I think that on both of those different fronts, we're really very much at the center of the debate. And our talent has been very much at the center of those debates, too.
Tough weekend story number 2, Raihan, is that the massacre at Brown, we don't know much about it other than almost incredible incompetence by law enforcement and follow-up, and that the one of the victims was the head of the Republicans at Brown. Don't know if it was targeted or not yet. And something was shouted that no one will tell us was shouted at the beginning of the attack. This goes to the fraying of the American consensus, meaning that you can go to university and disagree. How do we put this back together again, or do we just hope in the University of Austin and also Hillsdale and a handful of other institutions to renew the country?
Well, there are so many different aspects to this tragedy. One aspect is just a real reminder that law enforcement undergirds a civilized society. And, I'm someone who is a limited government conservative, but I also believe that we need state capacity when it comes to law enforcement. Our law enforcement personnel need to have the tools, they need to have the resources, they need to be celebrated. We need law enforcement to be a profession that is attracting the best and brightest. This is just a sine qua non. We have to do it. It is absolutely essential. It needs to be respected. It needs to be celebrated. That's really, really, really important. But then when it comes to that climate that you're describing, again, we don't know exactly what happened here. But I will tell you, Hugh, we have a profound mental health crisis that is unfolding in our country at the same time that we have institutions of higher education, educational institutions across the board that seem to have been losing sight of their mission. What is their job? How is it that they undergird a free society? And I think that that is just a big, larger, complex challenge. I believe that there are good people at a place like Brown University who are doing their best to do the right thing. But I really just don't know exactly what the motivation was here. But I do know that there's something going wrong with our young people and their formation, their cultural and intellectual formation. And, in this case, Brown University is not a perfect institution, but these kids were victims. I have no idea where this guy came from, what he was trying to do, but however imperfect this place is, it is a citadel of learning, and those young people should have been able to be safe. They should have been able to learn together, and that is a real tragedy that this has happened. So, again, hard for me to say with any great detail about exactly what happened in this case, but thank goodness for those folks in law enforcement who are trying to piece together what happened here and trying to restore a sense of safety.
Yeah, a shout out to City Journal and the work of Christopher Rufo. I think he's done some path-breaking, eye-opening in the course of what's gone with our institutional rot that yields this. Third big subject, Jimmy Lai is found guilty by the agents of the Leninist totalitarians under Xi's thumb. I don't know if we'll get him out. President Trump has told me, Secretary Rubio has told me on this program that they are committed to that. But what do you think about China and Xi? Are we back to the Cold War again?
Hugh, I am very concerned about the Chinese threat because I believe that China is a more formidable rival than we faced in our entire history. If you look at Nazi Germany was not a true peer competitor as China is right now. Even the Soviet Union represented a really formidable ideological threat. And of course, was enormous, sprawling, large population, but they were nowhere near where China is today in terms of their sophistication. They're right at the technological frontier. And also, look, they represent a different kind of ideological threat, but they do indeed represent an ideological threat. And I really believe that what is being done to Jimmy Lai is a tragedy, and it represents the difference between a society like ours that is based on respect for the individual and a society like theirs in which you have people who've been incredibly, creative, accomplished entrepreneurs who see everything going away in a nanosecond because they've run afoul of the political authorities. There's this notion that you have property rights in China. No, you don't. You don't have meaningful property rights the second that you run afoul of the regime. That is a system that is not worthy of the genius and accomplishment of the Chinese people. And I think that, when you look at the United States, one of the weird ironies about where we are right now, Hugh, is that our country is a country that has allowed real Chinese genius to unfold. When you look at people of Chinese origin who've come to our country, who've assimilated into our Western tradition, but who've also preserved some aspects of the best of the Chinese tradition, look at what they've managed to accomplish. Look at the incredible wealth they've been able to build. Look at the cultural flourishing you've seen. And I think that says something about our country and our creative potential. And I want to see Chinese civilization thrive. But I think that that is very much in tension with the Chinese Communist Party achieving its own objective, which is to rule always and forever, to brook no dissent, to prevent other voices, other political ideas from emerging and taking root. And I understand you want stability, you want public safety, you want that. But then they're also squelching human creativity. And I think that's what you see in the Jimmy Lai case, and it's a tragedy.
All right, my last big talking point, and then the good news, is that Russia's a criminal regime run by a gangster and a mass murderer. And we may have to do a deal with him. Sometimes you do. FDR and Churchill dealt with Stalin. But it seems to me moral clarity is missing from the United States about that. Do you think we can get that back? Is there any meaningful effort to get it back, that Russia is evil, as is run by Putin, and that we need to call it out that way?
Well, I don't need to tell you that the Russians have demonstrated very clearly that they are willing to do absolutely anything in order to divide Western societies, in order to kill not just Russian dissidents who dare to call out the regime for the horrors that it's inflicted on the Russian people. Let's leave aside the Ukrainian people. They have been willing to engage in extrajudicial, extraterritorial killings, assassinations. That represents a grave threat to our sovereignty. When you look at the ways in which they've been willing to, eager to, the ways that they've invested in disrupting our information environment, that's a real threat that we conservatives need to be really mindful of. So when it comes to getting to that moral clarity, you said it yourself. Right now, a lot of Americans are feeling exhausted. They are very concerned about whether we're husbanding our resources to tackle domestic challenges that we face, social and cultural challenges that we face. I get that. But look, the Russians do represent a potent threat, and we need to be clear-eyed about it. So are we going to get there? I think that we will, because I think that this regime, it's going to prove out. The evidence is going to be undeniable about what it is they intend to do to us. And I think that, a lot of folks are going to have to wise up.
I'm going to continue my conversation with Ryan for a couple more minutes about those things upon which we can perhaps lay our hopes or post our hopes on. That'll be over at my YouTube podcast and on the podcast tomorrow. But I want to thank him on air for joining me today. The Manhattan Institute must support institution, cityjournal.org, if you want to get the best magazine in America that's serious about ideas. That was a really fabulous conversation with Ryan, and it continued. It's all over at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt on YouTube. While you're there, I think we're about 200 people away from hitting the 100,000 mark, which pops us up in the algorithm and takes interviews with Ryan like that and spreads them far and wide. So please like and subscribe when you go there. But before you go there, go to HughHewitt.com and find the Angel Tree banner at the top. Thousands of you have contributed. I'd love to have more people like Jan and Carol, who sent nearly 1,000 kids into the prison fellowship Angel Tree program with one check. But I'll also take your $30 check. All of you are welcome. All you have to do is find that banner, or you can call in 888-206-2764. The countdown to Christmas is rapidly, we're running out of time to take care of kids. So please make your donation if you're going to do that right now. I greatly appreciate it. Let me also save you some money. You're going to give $30 or $60 or $90 away. We can get it back if you make the switch to Consumer Cellular. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh, ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh, or you can call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. One more time, 1-800-411-4454. Remember, my code is Hugh, H-U-G-H. And if you make the switch, you'll get your second month for free. Here's the great secret. You're being overcharged by Big Cellular for data plans that you don't need, especially if you're over 50. If you're over 50, you really want to call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454, because when you do, you'll find out you can get 2 lines of unlimited data if you're 50 years and older. You and your spouse, you and your friend, you can get 2 lines, keep your number, keep your data, for $60 a month. And that's a deal that can't be beat, really can't be beat. But it only starts when you call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454. Finally, let me protect you in this holiday season. Webroot.com/Hewitt. Webroot.com/Hewitt. You need to go there and you need to find out that the evil people on the internet, and they are evil, they'll take every dollar you've got. They'll coax you into schemes you don't want to be a part of. They'll pretend to be people who they're not. They'll pretend to be your children who are calling you in need, or your grandchildren. You need total protection. And right now you can get 60% with the all-encompassing Webroot Total Protection if you use my name, Hewitt, webroot.com/Hewitt. Remember, their individual product protects one identity on 5 devices. Their family plan, because they know that some of you have many people in your family, 10 identities and up to 10 devices. Maybe you don't want someone having a device covered. It's up to you. But webroot.com/Hewitt is the place to start. You'll save a lot of money. You'll save a lot of peace of mind, and you'll be protected from the cyber crooks who are out there this time of year just waiting for you to hit the wrong link, make the wrong step. Finally, I've told you a couple of times today, I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio. I dropped the bag during the first thing. There's the bag. I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio. Relief Factor makes it possible for you. I didn't go out today. I've not left the house today. 19 degrees outside. I'm from Ohio. I used to be tough. I spent 30 years in California, and I'm not tough anymore. And I go to Maine in the summer, but that's like beautiful. And Virginia's average temperature in the winter is supposed to be 45 to 55 degrees. 19 degrees is not my style. I went out last night, walking like this. Yesterday morning to Mass, walking like this because everything was iced over. We had ice rain in Virginia. But I don't want to fall, so I'm staying indoors. But I'm doing some lifting, moderate lifting, stuff I don't normally do. That means I might end up with some of the minor aches and pains I don't normally have. That's why I'm very glad I've got Relief Factor. And you can join the club for $19.95. 3-week starter pack. That's the pack that they lose money on every time they send it to you. To get it, to try it for 3 weeks, 3 packs of Relief Factor. That's 4 Icarian, curcumin, and resveratrol omega pills a day. You take it 3 times a day the first week, 2 times a day the second week, and then you're like me on the once-a-week project for the rest of your days. I've been taking it for 13 years come January 1. It's the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. I'm not interested in it. They simply go on and on and on. They keep asking you to take stuff, and I get knocked on my door, my virtual door, my radio door all the time. Hey, don't you want to make a lot of money and take X or Y or Z? No, I've been blessed with good health. Relief Factor is the only thing I need because I do try and get the miles in, unless it's 19 degrees outside. But I think you'll find that, as with the thousands of people who are using Relief Factor, it really does make every single part of your day better. Whether you're lifting or dropping or packing or wrapping or putting up trees or hanging wreaths or whatever it is we're doing during this time of season, Relief Factor makes it easier. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Either place you can get that special introductory offer, the starter pack, especially at relieffactor.com. One of those faithful is former Congressman Mike Gallagher. He used to be a weekly guest on my show. Wait a minute. You're not wearing your Browns gear. I thought we had a deal, Congressman Gallagher, that you would have your Browns gear on today.
I was rooting for the Browns yesterday when they played the Bears. Unfortunately, much like the Packers season, which summarily ended for all practical purposes yesterday in one of the most tragic losses of my adult life, the Browns got crushed by the Chicago Bears 31-3.
What did you expect? The only team that lost to them this year that was ranked was the Packers. in
I
Cleveland,
know.
I might add. I
I
want
don't
to
know
put
why I
that aside.
let myself get my hopes up. I should have just reminded myself we lost to the Browns.
Yeah, you lost to the
Ugh.
Browns. Congressman, I asked you on because we canceled the Constellation frigate last month, and I said, "Oh my God, we're not building anything." And then I see out of the corner of my eye, Palantir, for whom you work now, is going to help the Navy, and I stood up and applauded. But tell me, how are you going to help the Navy? Because we got to build some ships.
100%, Hugh, as we talked about basically for 8 years when I came on your show every week, we're a maritime nation. It's our maritime dominance has always relied on our industrial might, our technological superiority, our ability to just crank out ships. But today, that supremacy is under threat. We're losing ground to China. China's shipbuilding capacity is more than 200 times ours. Last year, China produced more ships in a single year than we have since World War II. Our fleet's still going down. And so, what is exciting about the current moment is that Congress made an investment in non-traditional approaches to naval shipbuilding. In the reconciliation bill, there's about $6 billion worth of non-traditional big bets, one of which is the application of artificial intelligence and autonomy to shipbuilding so that we can take a lot of the lessons we're learning at the cutting edge of commercial software and where that meets manufacturing and apply it to our maritime industrial base. We've been doing a pilot with the Navy for the last 4 months. The results have already proven to be transformative. At one major shipbuilder, where a lot of things are behind schedule, we save 20 planning days a week. Building a schedule used to take 160 hours, four people's full-time job. It now takes 10 minutes. At another public yard, we took yeah. So imagine that multiplied across, thousands of instances. We projected 2,500 planning days saved per year at a public yard. At a supplier, what's called a manufacturing bill of materials process, it used to take 200 hours. It now takes them 12 seconds just by using cutting edge commercial AI enabled software and applying it to shipbuilding. And also, the final thing I'd say is we also are going to build a tool for the Secretary of the Navy and Navy leadership so they can track what's happening in real time so they know if and why a particular ship or hull is behind schedule and what they need to do to get it back on schedule. That's how we restore our shipbuilding advantage.
That's very encouraging. What does the Navy brass think about it? What do the unions at the yards think about it?
Well, the Navy brass has been incredibly supportive. I think you're going to see some other non-traditional approaches from this administration. But Secretary Phelan announced this project, what we're calling ShipOS, last week. He was joined by Palantir CEO Alex Karp, and there's a lot of enthusiasm in the Navy. And what's been even more gratifying is that based on the work we've done already in the pilot, there's actual enthusiasm among the shipbuilders, both public, private, and the suppliers. Because, if you're a critical supplier, you make one part that's necessary for the construction of a Virginia or a Columbia class submarine, you're under an enormous pressure to deliver, but maybe you don't have a commercial business, right? And so if the Navy's coming in and arming you with the absolute best software tools in the world, it's a massive win. And that actually leads to your second question, which is, I think there's a narrative out there that somehow AI is going to be bad for jobs, and therefore unions should be skeptical of artificial intelligence because it threatens jobs. I think the exact opposite is true. I think what you're going to see, particularly where artificial intelligence is deployed in heavy manufacturing industries and deployed smartly, like we do it at Palantir, where we forward deploy our software engineers to work hand in hand with the shipyard workers, most of whom are union members, is that it's actually going to make them more productive, which means they're going to make a ton more money in the process. Yes, there's going to be certain industries for which, or jobs, largely middle management positions, that AI might be able to replace. But when it comes to human beings that can actually make things, that are welding things, that are necessary to build things, I think artificial intelligence is going to be like an Iron Man suit wrapped around every shipyard worker. And I think unions could be a natural partner in this effort to complement the political partnership you're seeing President Trump make with certain unions around the country.
That's a great analogy. Tell me, how does it apply not just to the old bigs, and we all know General Dynamics and Electric Boat, the old bigs. How about the young upstarts like Anduril, and there are many others who are building non-traditional and doing so in non-traditional ways? Do they embrace Palantir as well, or just the bigs?
Well, the good news is for the non-traditional companies, whether it's Anduril, whether it's Saronic, whether it's Saildrone, which by the way, we need these companies to succeed, survive. We need a defense industrial base that is far more diverse, that has many more players. So I welcome the success these companies are having, and I hope that we'll see more non-traditional defense tech companies go public and be part of the S&P 500. I think that's healthy for not only those companies, but for everyday Americans who want to invest in companies like that. Um, we already have partnerships with them that predate the ShipOS effort. And largely what we've seen in the non-traditional space is companies are willing to put their own capital at risk to have access to these software tools that Palantir provides. And so there's also just a cultural affinity, Anduril, for example, most of the leadership at Anduril is former Palantir. And so it's a really exciting time to be in non-traditional defense tech. And I think, your average American taxpayer has an expectation that whenever Congress spends this amount of money, i.e., the money that's in reconciliation, where we have $200 billion for defense, they should expect a return on that investment. And so merely funneling more money down the status quo, particularly in shipbuilding, I think is unlikely to yield a return on the investment or a different outcome. But by making a series of big non-traditional bets, I think we have reason to be very optimistic for the future of shipbuilding. And that's the final key point. Traditionally, when we, infuse more money into the defense industrial base, we spread it around so thinly that it doesn't have an impact. Well, here with reconciliation, we're making a smaller number of concentrated big bets, and that's what I'm excited about.
Congressman, I have two more questions for you, which we'll do off air and add to the podcast. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll make sure that it's on the YouTube edition of the Mike Gallagher interview. It's always good to catch up with Gallagher, Green Bay Packers fan though he might be. Let me remind all of you who are still pulling out your hair, what am I going to get for someone for a gift? I have a column in Fox News tomorrow about the 3 books that make great Christmas gifts. But you know what? A book is not something you give to a client. No. Not something you give to mom or dad unless it's gift number 10. What you can give them is a grill from BestHotGrill.com. BestHotGrill.com has got all sizes of grills. I'm closing the show with an appeal to you. Please go to Best Hot Grill and look at what you can get your clients and customers to show them love and gratitude. You give a gift with a positive image for you and your organization. Take a look. They've got 5 different sizes. Look, you give the big daddy of them all, the Solaire infrared grill that's the big one. You can give that to your mom or your dad or your grandpa or your grandmother. I mean, really the very best client anyone's ever had in the world. But for any great client, give the portable Best Hot Grill from the Solaire Infrared Grill family of grills. They can take it with them on every tailgate, on every picnic, on every vacation, and bring with them the best tasting food because Solaire Infrared Grills are the very best grill out there. You can count on my friends Rhett and Irene to deliver to you the very best quality in a grill. And that's the BestHotGrill.com. I want to finish the show by talking about what's going on the Hill right now in the context of our sponsor, PharmaWindfall.com. PharmaWindfall.com is the website operated by conservatives for lower health care costs. There are a lot of good ideas up on the Hill. There are a lot of bad ideas up on the Hill. And they're talking about them on a very truncated time frame. The kind of thing slippery lobbyists love. When a big bill tries to get done in a little bit of time, I'm against that, by the way, generally, but I'm really against a health care bill that tries to get done in a very little bit of time. Because you know who wins? People with the most lobbyists who pay the lobbyists the most. And you know who that is? Big Pharma. Big Pharma has looted the American Treasury on at least 3 occasions. One occasion I won't say loot. Operation Warp Speed was a necessity. Now, we spent trillions more than we needed to get the COVID vaccinations that we got, but they worked. They saved us. Big Pharma is a wonderful part of America, great scientists, great leadership, but their lobbyists just always want more, and they screwed us with Obamacare. They went in there and they got a big bailout for Big Pharma during Obamacare, and Obamacare, I said this on Friday night on Special Report, a catastrophic failure, a systemic failure, a failure that has I really don't know how we get out of it unless we just take it all apart and start over. You keep Medicare, you keep employer-based healthcare plan, you reform Medicaid, you do a few other things, and then you go after our diced up, sliced up, ridiculous Obamacare insurance policy. But pharma doesn't need to get any money out of that. Head to pharmawindfall.com and make sure your voice is added to those of the millions of Americans who say Big Pharma's had enough of free money. They're making too much money. President Trump is standing up to them, and applaud him for doing so at pharmawindfall.com.